Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Lynchburg, Unitarian Universalist. Here we gather in a spirit of freedom and friendship. Whoever you are, whatever your beliefs, whatever your age, and whomever you love, you are welcome here. As we work for justice, compassion, and peace, we also acknowledge with humility that our buildings sit on land originally part of the Monacan Nation. I'm Terry Bailiff. I'm the professional minister of this congregation, but I share the ministry with all of our members and friends. If you're here for the first time, we're glad you chose to be here this morning to participate in the service of this church community we love. We would be happy to tell you more about our community during virtual social time following the service. If you'd like to receive the monthly newsletter or our Friday e-news, I invite you to fill out the visitor card on the back of the chairs in the sanctuary or on our website, uulynchburg.org. You may also want to join our Facebook group. I am so happy this morning to welcome Alice Lupton Smith here. Alice is going to share some of her poetry this morning. My friend Art, who's here this morning also on Zoom, periodically would forward a poem from Alice that he thought I would like. You may have read some of them when I pass them on to you in our Friday e-news. I found that several of her poems pushed me to think about my life and my values. A few months ago, I asked Alice if she would be willing to share her poetry during a service, and she graciously agreed. This morning, she joins us from her home in Chatanooga, Tennessee. So Alice, thank you so much for being here this morning. It's a gift to know you and to read your poetry. Please join us next Sunday for our congregational meeting to elect officers, decide about whether we as a congregation want to support a social justice issue, and to conduct church business. So now, I invite us to release whatever worries we brought in this morning, to just let them go, and to take a couple of deep, cleansing breaths to center ourselves and calm ourselves as we join together in a spirit of worship. As we enter our time of worship, we light the flame of our chalice, sharing these words together. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, O Spirit of life. Our opening words this morning come from the Reverend Scott Taylor, entitled Beauty Woven Fine. As we celebrate life's beauty, may we never forget that we are part of it. It is woven around us, through us, between us. We are here to notice those elegant strands, the way they call to us, the way they hold us, the way they connect us. May our time together today enable that beauty to shine. Let us now rise in body or spirit, if we're in the sanctuary, to share together hymn 326, Let All the Beauty We Have Known. Thank you. And Katrina, thank you for being with us this morning and sharing our time for all ages.
Thank you, Terry. Welcome to A Time for All Ages. Yesterday afternoon during our religious education classes, we started a new theme for Soul Matters. We started the theme, Nurturing Beauty. And we talked about how important it is to honor and celebrate the beauty around us, the beauty within us, and the beauty in one another. One of the ways that we talked about expressing this way of honoring that which is beautiful around us is through poetry. Poetry is a wonderful way to express feelings, deep feelings. You can write or speak your poems, or just think about them in your mind. You can write a poem about something or someone that you really love, or an experience that was like just the best thing ever. You can write or speak about something that you have a concern about or would like to change. When you see a situation that isn't fair, a social justice issue or a climate change issue, you can put those thoughts into words with poems. One person who does this in a special way is Amanda Gorman. And you may have heard of her. She is the poet laureate who spoke at President Biden's inauguration. Now, poet laureate is someone who is assigned or appointed as a very special poet by an institution or by a government. Well, Amanda has written a wonderful children's book called Change Sings. And I'm going to share that with you this morning. It's a beautiful book and it's a beautiful poem, and I hope you enjoy it. I can hear change humming in its loudest, proudest song. I don't fear change coming, and so I sing along. I scream with the skies of red and blue streamers. I dream with the cries of tried and true dreamers. I'm a chant that rises and rings. There is hope where my change sings. Though some don't understand it, those windmills of mysteries, I sing with all the planet and its hills of histories. I hum with 100 hearts, each of us lifting a hand. I use my strengths and my smarts, take a knee to make a stand. I'm bright as this light each day brings. There's love where my change sings. I show others tolerance, though it might take some courage. I don't make a taller fence, but fight to build a better bridge. I talk not only of distances from where and how we came, I also walk our differences to show we are the same. I'm a movement that roars and springs. There's a wave where my change sings. Change sings where? There, inside of me, because I'm the change I want to see. As I grow, it grows like seeds. I am just what the world needs. I'm the voice where freedom rings. You're the love your bright heart brings. We are the waves starting to spring, for we are the change we sing. We're what the world is becoming, and we know it won't be long. We all hear change strumming. Won't you sing along? Thank you so much. I tell you, reading this book and hearing the words by Amanda Gorman inspires me to write poems and to think about how best I could express deep thoughts. I hope it will do the same for you. Thank you, and blessed be.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite children who would like to go upstairs to have activities with Kaylee and Candace. Y'all have fun. The ministries of our congregation are supported by the love, talent, and efforts of our many volunteers and staff, as well as the monetary support of our members and friends. If you found this church to be of meaning in your life, then I invite you to make an offering of your gifts, either here in the sanctuary, or you may go to our website to find the donate button to offer donations to First Unitarian. Gifts given in love and hope continue a cycle of love and hope.
From you I receive you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Let us now just take a moment to pause our recording. So, Spirit of life and love, we hold up today the wonder and beauty of life in all its tragedy and joy. We are particularly aware this morning of those who find themselves refugees fleeing Ukraine, Palestine, Yemen, China, countries in Africa. We are becoming more and more a world of migration, where people who are suffering from war or drought, other kinds of climate change, upheaval, is putting pressure on all of us to figure out how we will help work to create a more just and loving world where every person has the possibility to have their dreams become a reality, to live a meaningful, peaceful, safe life. We hold up today, particularly those who are ill in mind, body, or spirit. May they find healing and wholeness. We give thanks for this community and all the communities around the world whose members are committed to finding the work for justice and peace that is theirs to do. And may we in Lynchburg find ways that we too can help build the beloved community. This we ask in the name of all that is sacred. Amen. Alice, it's so wonderful to have you here this morning, and thank you for your generosity in sharing some of your poetry with us this morning. So welcome to Lynchburg via Zoom.
Thank you, Terry. When Terry first asked me if I would do this, she described this as a poetry reading / sermon. And I said, I've never given a sermon in my life and don't plan to ever give one. If you'll take sermon out of the description, I will give a poetry reading. But I have to warn you all, I've never done a poetry reading by Zoom either. So you all are my guinea pigs. We'll have to see how this goes. To begin with, I would like to read a poem that might give you some kind of idea of where I grew up and the time I grew up in and what was going on then and later. This is called Dreams Can Change. I lived the life of a little girl growing up on Lookout, the mountain in the famous speech of Martin Luther King. There were no colored children in my school or in my pool. They learned and played in a separate but equal space. They drank from different fountains and dined in different diners. I didn't know to dare to dream of righting this wretched wrong, but others marched and multiplied, seeing the pain and long division. My grandchild got her start at Battle Elementary, a far more colorful place where children play together and learn a different race. One day, that little girl took me by the hand and led me to the changing room where her dancing clothes were stored. She took off everything and twirled around in nothing. Her dance was interrupted when a speedy little boy crashed into the common room and stripped to use the potty. I stood there smiling at unself-conscious blended beauty. No one blinked and no one stared at the naked difference in color and in gender. Oh, how far we've come, and oh, how far we have to go. I don't really know quite where we're going right now. It's one thing I think we all know is it's a very divided time. And poetry has a way of dealing with divides in a way that no other language does. And that's one of the reasons I write poetry. I get a newsletter every day in my inbox called Daily Good. And believe me, it's a lot more life-giving, at least for me, than daily news. And recently I read in Daily Good, it was talking about poetry. And it said that poetry has a way of shoring us up in times of difficulty and putting into words what is hard to perceive. I know that that's one of the reasons I write poetry, because I'm able to speak my truth without trampling over someone else's truth. This article also said that poetry has a way of bridging these divides that we inhabit. And we do inhabit divides right now. And speaking of bridges, that leads to my next poem, Bridges, Bridges Everywhere. No wall, no wall. That's right, no wall at all. Barriers are bummers, bridges are the answer. One from me to you, one from us to them, one from here to there. Bridges, bridges everywhere. Overpasses, underpasses, why not build a tunnel? Cultures intertwining, energy combining, connectedness, cohesiveness. Let's celebrate togetherness. No wall, no wall. Let's all dismantle the wall. People ask me where I get my ideas to write poetry, and I would just have to say everywhere. It can be a trip to the grocery store or sitting out in the grass or reading other people's poetry. One person who has inspired a lot of poetry for me is John Meacham. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but he's written a whole lot of books and he speaks a lot. We can claim him here in Chattanooga. He grew up here, went to school here, and then went to University of the South up in Mont Eagle, just up the road. He has a way of talking politics without being partisan. And I don't know how he does it, but I'm always just so impressed every time I've heard him speak. He talks a lot about our better angels. And these next two poems, I'm going to talk about our better angels. A fertile circle. If I descend to my hands and knees and dig through my personal patch of closely held opinions, and you, who live on the other side, agree to do the same, who knows what sort of soil our digging will unearth? If we loosen the land, perhaps the dividing wall will finally begin to fall, and we might soon discover a fertile circle of common ground where curiosity thrives and better angels come alive. This next Better Angels poem is one Terry told me she wanted me to read. And I said, well, I wrote this for the 4th of July, and this is going to be May 15th. So anyway, I decided, well, I'll just read it anyway. It's about hope, and we can hear about hope any day of the year. It doesn't have to be the 4th of July. Fireworks filled with hope. May this Independence Day spark in us a hopeful ray. May better angels of our nature make their presence known. May fairness and equality come into their own. May walls of spite and hatred crack and finally fall. May new and sturdy bridges connect us one and all. May every hour give us power to endure the woeful. May every season bring a reason to make us ever hopeful. May there be surprises imbued with faith instead of fear. May liberty and justice reign from year to year. May hope and true compassion explode throughout the land as voices blend together, singing, yes, we can. When I was putting together this group of poems that I was going to use, the next poem was going to be a poem that I wrote during the pandemic, about the pandemic, and I'm sick of the pandemic, and I think everybody else probably is too. So I thought, I've got to find something else. I'm not going to read about the pandemic. And I was recently up in
west on US 64 West, US 74 West towards Cherokee Trail.
And I was sitting in the grass taking a picture of dandelion because I was going to post my dandelion poem on my poetry page and wanted a picture of it. And I thought, I think maybe I'll read the poem about dandelions instead of the pandemic. And then when I got home, in the mail was a package of books that Terry had sent me. And there was this card, one of those pop-up cards, 3D cards that had a big dandelion that popped up in the center of the card. And I thought, okay, that answers it. I'm reading the dandelion poem. Wait a minute, I've messed myself up and lost the dandelion poem. Here it is. They say a diamond is forever and dandelions are pesky weeds, but I'd rather be a dandelion. Why would I desire to be a cold, hard stone sitting on a finger or resting on a chest when I could be a burst of beauty, waiting for a child to pluck me and weave me into wild and wondrous wear? Why would I desire to be locked in a mine when I could be one with the grass, growing wild and free, waiting for the wind to blow, making more and more of me? I would rather be a weed than a stone, a flower than a jewel, a tiny piece of unconventional beauty, embracing my fragility and open to uncertainty. I had a poem about Mr. Rogers that I wrote after I saw the movie, the first movie that was put out about him, the documentary, and talked about his being a hero and that his superpower was the power of listening. And I was going to read that poem, but I'm going to read this poem about listening instead. Be silent and listen. Silent and listen. Their letters are the same. Let us be silent from time to time and listen to the world around us. Pay attention to morning sounds, to the breath of the one beside you, to the thoughts beginning to brood, to the faint chirp of an unknown bird, to the baby's waking coo. Listen as the day goes on, to the whistling wind in the trees and the crow's cacophonous call, to voices in the neighborhood and thoughts continuing to gnaw. As night is drawing nigh, lend an ear to the earth, tune into the sky, hear the crickets and hearken the rain. Pay attention to those in pain. When day is over and covers are drawn, there still is more to come, for listening time is never done. Several years ago, I was in a group, it was a racial equity group, and the facilitator of the group asked each person in the group to write down 3 descriptions of who they were. He said we didn't have to share them or anything, but just have in our minds, excuse me, 3 descriptions. After we finished this, he asked the people in the group, how many of you used race as one of your descriptions? Everyone in the group who was not white raised their hand. And no, all of the white people, none of them raised their hand as their race being a description. So that got me to thinking about myself as a white person. And I wrote this poem. After I read this poem, Terry said that there's somebody who understands technology who can put up a picture of a sculpture I found that I posted with my poem online. But first I'll read the poem and then I'll talk to you about the sculpture. My whiteness. My whiteness feels like a weighty cloak, heavy laden with privilege and cross-stitched with unawareness. I was swaddled in my whiteness the moment I was born, but oftentimes it felt like I was wearing nothing, skinny dipping through life, oblivious to the blessings of birth. I've been wrapped in security and cradled in a culture woven with threads of blatant bigotry and subtle oppression. I can never remove my whiteness, but the time has come to completely refashion the fabric of my inner world and the pattern of our outer world. Now, I can't see what you all see, but do you see a sculpture? Okay, there it is. Now I can see it. This sculpture is called Cloak of Conscience, and it was created by a sculptor named Anna Cromie. She is now 82 years old. I think she was in her late 70s when she created this piece of work. And the sculpture is 15 feet tall and weighs 250 tons. You can actually walk into it. And it's the largest sculpture that has ever been created out of a single piece of marble. I'm just in awe of this piece of work. The last time I communicated with Anna Cromie, she told me she was in the process of trying to get it to London. I think some group in London had bought it, but I just think it's an amazing piece of work, and I wanted you to see it too. The next poem I'm going to read, I wrote it as a song, and I'm not musical. I'm not a songwriter, and I don't play an instrument, but in my mind, it was a song. But all I could do was write the words. And several years ago, my husband and I went on a pilgrimage to Iona in Scotland, and there was a young woman, Kelly McFarlane, who was on the trip, and I had been asked to do a poetry reading, and she was a musician. And I told her about this poem I was going to read, and I said, I've always wanted it to be a song. And she said, well, the words are the hard part for me. The music is easy. If you'll give me the words, I'll turn it into a song. And she did. I wish that I had her here to sing it, because she wrote a beautiful song, and the only copy of it I have is somebody took a video of her singing it while we were in Iona. But you all just get the words, and you'll have to imagine it put to music, or maybe one of you can put it to different music. This is called Lead Me On. Take me as I am, lead me on, through the night of mystery, into the morning song. Take me as I am, filled with hope, filled with fear. Take me as I am and lead me on. If I stumble in the dark, sing the notes loud and strong. Sing them out, sing them clear, sing the notes so I can hear. Lead me on, through the night of mystery, into the morning song. When I was speaking to Terry earlier this week, I told her these next two poems are filled with questions, and she said, oh, that's wonderful. Unitarians love questions. So I'm glad I've got an audience of people who love questions. Crying for the world. I'm crying tears for a broken world, trying to find a splash of hope. I tend to drift towards fantasy, where happily ever after always wins the day. And yet I know when I dip my toe in stark reality, there is no happily ever after, only the here and now. What can we do to change where we are? How can we stop the shouting and discover how to listen? How can we stop the trampling and learn to stand together? How can we stop the cruelty and deliver true compassion? How can we stop the wars and live in a world of peace? How can we change the here and now and turn it inside out? This next poem, the title is just a big question mark. What would happen if we took our heavy insecurities and slashed them into pieces, sewing them back together into a lightweight, carefree cardigan? What would happen if we bounced around our tightly held opinions and somehow caught what we had missed before? What would happen if we took a hunk of pride, melting it like butter, then added in some ordinary to make some humble pie? What would happen if we always spoke the truth, letting it soar from our soul like a caged bird, released to fly among the clouds? What would happen if we saw each human being as an exquisite piece of art, carefully crafted by a loving sculptor? What in the world would happen? And now that I've read poems that are all about questions, I'd like to read a quote from Lynn Twist, who is the author of Soul of Money. I got this quote also from Daily Good. Rather than looking at the unanswered questions, we now need to be looking at the unquestioned answers of our time. The last poem I would like to read today, I was asked to write for a festival here in Chattanooga called Paths to Peace. It was put on by a group called the Center for Mindful Living. And unfortunately, that center no longer exists. It was done in by the pandemic. But at the last festival they sponsored, I read this poem. Deeply intertwined. Your skin may not be white like mine, but be it black or brown or something in between. The hearts inside our epidermis beat to a common drum. Your eyes may not be blue, but be they chocolate, green, or gray, they cry like mine in a similar salty way. Our tears and fears are deeply intertwined. Every one of us shudders at the thought of being torn apart from those we dearly love, or being left alone crying in the dark. Every one of us needs to be nourished and needs to be hugged, needs to be wanted and needs to be loved. We see the same stars and walk the same earth, yet somehow we're different from the moment of birth. Although we're distinct, we're also the same, all seeking solace and avoiding pain. Perhaps one day the looming clouds will open wide and wash away what now divides and separates us from the peace that passes understanding. On that day, our eyes will see our lovely commonality and share the holy mystery that dwells in all humanity. Again, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this service today. And I hope in some time I may be able to get to actually meet some of you in person. This has been a very much of a treat for me. I was a little nervous about it, but I'm glad I did it. Thank you.
Alice, thank you so much. And let's just take a moment to hold Alice and her powerful words, appreciating her openness and sharing with us and challenging us to be more than perhaps we thought we could be. Thank you, Alice. In a spirit of gratitude and hope and possibility, let us rise in body or spirit, or sit up straighter if we're at home, and sing together For All That Is Our Life.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all each new thing we learn. For fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
Benediction today comes from Alice Smith, and I share this blessing. Oh, the wasted time we've spent tangled in vindictiveness and blinded by pathetic pride. If we could find a crack in this locked and loaded time, then maybe we could reach into a grander place, a much more generous space that holds a reimagined story starring one and all. Let us find a way to rise and stretch beyond ourselves, to link our souls together and hold up one another. Let us blink our blurry eyes until we have the vision to see a tender-hearted tale filled with true compassion. Once we finally made it there, we'll wonder why we dawdled here. As we extinguish our chalice, let us share these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. So for our social time this morning, let's just take a little time if people have questions, comments for Alice, or if you're new today, if you have questions about the fellowship. And then in a few minutes, folks on Zoom and folks here can visit separately. It gets a little chaotic with the different sounds.